Tap like, lock the timeline, and tell me the first detail your eye can't ignore. Because in this case, a single minute may be the difference between a clean commute and a vanishing. It starts on an ordinary Tuesday that only feels ominous in hindsight. January 23, 2006. A young professional in Orlando winds down the day. Emails, small plans, the comfort of a routine. Around 10 p.m., she speaks with her boyfriend. 3 minutes. Familiar warmth. Tomorrow's promises. The call ends. In her condo, lights go dark. On the map, the night pins itself to one address. Latitude and longitude like a lullaby. Morning arrives, and something is missing that no alarm can name. Messages go unanswered. She should be on a short, straight drive to work. A few turns, a handful of lights, minutes at most. The phone stays still. The blue navigation line in your head refuses to animate. By late morning, concern hardens. By afternoon, procedure begins. Friends and family check in, then show up. The bed looks slept in. A towel hangs damp from a shower. Clothes that match her workday are gone from the closet. The trail of a morning routine leads to the front door and stops. 2 days later, the map blinks. Her black car appears in the lot of a nearby apartment complex, roughly a mile from the condo, far enough to seem separate, close enough to feel deliberate. On satellite view, it's nothing more than a rectangle of shadow among others. But in the story, it becomes a metronome. Here, not here, here again. The camera that matters isn't beautiful. It's grainy, functional, bolted to a wall. The footage shows the car easing into a space as calmly as if returning home. A person exits, walks away, and the fence in front of the lens divides each frame so that the face never appears, perfectly hidden by the same post, step after step. You replay it, hoping for a slip, a profile, a reflection in glass, a fragment of hair. The pixels hold their oath. Plot the pins, her condo, the office she never reached, the apartment lot where the car rests like a black box that won't open. Now lay time over distance. 10 p.m. Last confirmed call. Early morning, signs of a normal start and then silence. 48 hours. Vehicle relocation. In that span lives a corridor only 2 people truly know, the walker and the woman who should have arrived at work. Detectives begin to fold the city into a clock. They trace the route from condo to lot until it burns into memory. They canvass doors, request surveillance, check buses and maintenance logs. They ask about a jacket, a stride, a height. They watch the tape again. The cadence of the walker and the rhythm of the fence post align like gears, turning a person into a moving redaction. Her friends recite the human details the way people do when trying to keep someone real, punctual, disciplined, making plans for the weekend. Her parents speak with that tremor we recognize from too many cases, hope braided to exhaustion. The blue line from home to office sits unspent, as if the city itself held its breath. Stand for a moment in that apartment lot at dusk. Hear the soft tick of a cooling engine. Imagine the walker choosing a space neither too hidden nor too exposed, wanting the car found but not explained. A door opens, closes, shoulders set. Hands disappear into pockets. No hurry, no panic. A practice normal. What happened between the last phone call and that camera's indifferent eye? Did the route bend at a detour no one remembers? Was there a second vehicle? A side entrance? A neighbor's dog that barked and then fell quiet? Maps can carry you to the edge of a locked room, but they can't turn the key. There is one detail that always makes viewers rewind. After the walker leaves, the car remains, silent, cooling, as if thinking. Somewhere, inside, fingerprints and fibers argue with time. Somewhere outside, the fence keeps its secret, a wooden bar that censors every frame at the precise place where identity would live. And then the near miss, a fraction of a step when you think you see cheekbone, or the tilt of a cap. People freeze the moment, sharpen it, pray it into clarity. It never gives enough. The figure collects a name anyway, two words that sound like an accusation and a myth. The parking lot walker. By the second morning, the city had learned her name. It moved like a question through parking garages and apartment breezeways, through office kitchens where microwaves hummed over whispered theories. Flyers appeared on corkboards and stop signs, her photo bright against the sun-bleached red. The routine she never finished turned strangers into searchers. Detectives began where the clock last spoke clearly. 10 p.m., a 3-minute call. If there was fear in her voice, no one heard it. If someone stood outside her door, the peephole kept its silence. They sketched the short commute she should have taken and found nothing guaranteed along the way. No plate-reading cameras in 2006. No wall-to-wall surveillance like a modern grid. Side streets coiled around retention ponds and stucco walls, each cul-de-sac a shallow bowl where sound went to sleep. Inside the condo, the small details argued for a morning in progress. A shower used, a place on the dresser where a watch had rested, clothes missing in a way that matched a workday, not a trip, no suitcase gone, no chaotic drawer, nothing flung or broken. The absence felt curated, as if someone had dusted the morning clean of panic. Her phone did not light again. Her car, 2 days later, would. The apartment complex where the vehicle appeared was close enough to feel cruel. People who lived there swore they would have noticed a stranger. But life is practiced at ignoring itself. The surveillance camera offered its fragment. A car rolling in, a person walking away, a fence post slicing identity into ribbons. Detectives tried to time the steps, the length of a stride, the angle of a shoulder. They played with height estimates and footwear rumors the way investigators must, but each measurement collapsed in the wobble of analog video. There were calls about men who worked near her building, about catcalls and stares that mad is. The evenings feel longer than they were. Friends remembered stories that now seemed bigger. Neighbors replayed hallway encounters and wondered if caution had been trying to introduce itself. Nothing crossed the line between discomfort and proof. The map kept its poker face. Canvassing turned into a metronome of doors, questions, nods. Was there a delivery truck idling before dawn? Did anyone walk a dog at the wrong moment and see the right thing? A woman thought she heard a car door at an hour that didn't belong to her schedule. A man recalled a figure in a hood too heavy for the weather. Heat makes memory impressionable. The reports wound into the file, tagged and dated, waiting for a spine to thread them into clarity. Then the car itself became the stage. Its position in the lot seemed chosen, visible, not spotlighted. Ordinary, not abandoned. Was the point to conceal a trail or to end one? People debated the way the wheels were turned, the neatness of the parking job, whether a stranger parks that cleanly when adrenaline is loud in the ears. The questions multiplied, as if they were a kind of evidence. Her parents moved through interviews with the steady tremor of resolve. They thanked volunteers, pressed for tips, begged the city to keep looking. You could hear a civilization's thin promise in their voices, that we will not let a person vanish between a bedroom light switch and a security camera. Tips flooded in. Most were heat without flame. A handful flickered. Detectives rebuilt the last verified minutes and threw them like a net across the neighborhood. They looked for gas stations that still saved tape, for store managers who remembered the exact day a clerk forgot to rewind a camera. One store had overwritten its footage. Another kept a week, but the angle faced inward, catching only customers and a bright rack of gum. Somewhere, the right lens had been point, Ted outward, and no one knew it yet. The timeline narrowed not with revelation, but with subtraction. A call that never connected. A voicemail that never played. A doorbell someone meant to check and didn't. On the map, those missing beats looked like a straight line. In live time, they were a tightening band around the throat of certainty. There was, however, one stubborn rhythm that wouldn't leave the case, the measured pace of the parking lot walker. Not a jog, not a glance back, not the anxious flinch of a person improvising their way out of panic. The walk said practice, or familiarity, or the kind of nerve that means the world will not recognize you, even if it tries. Each viewing sharpened the paradox. The more you watched, the less you knew. By the end of the week, the search grid grew teeth. Dive teams worked retention ponds. Helicopters traced loops over identical roofs. Dogs followed scents that lived just long enough to reach the complex and then thinned in the heat. The city kept breathing, unbothered, as if a person could be folded into its daily routine and carried along unnoticed. And then a detail surfaced that did not feel dramatic until someone laid it against the map. A timestamp emerged from a business on the corridor between condo and car. Mundane, precise, printed in the corner of footage no one had requested the first day. It didn't show her. It didn't show the walker. It showed a shadow flick across a glass door at an hour that clipped the window smaller than anyone had believed. The corridor of time shrank to minutes. The blue line squeezed tight. If the map had been a canvas, a new brushstroke had just crossed it, and the image at last began to change. The timestamp slid into place like a quiet hinge, turning the entire case by a few stubborn degrees. It trimmed the dark hours into a narrow corridor and suggested something almost impolite in its certainty. There wasn't room for improvisation. Whatever happened after that 3-minute call had been planned tightly enough to pass through the shrinking window without scraping the frame. Detectives reworked the map as if it were a living thing with arteries and habits. They traced the short drive she never made and then redrew the city around the business that kept time for them by accident. Between the condo and the parking lot, there were service lanes that looked like shortcuts, but weren't. Gates that locals swore were always locked until someone admitted they were mostly just closed. Retention ponds rimmed with reeds that remembered more than they would reveal. The path from disappearance to the car had once been 1,000 options. Now it felt like 5, perhaps 3. With the window tightened, small choices turned into loud statements. The car's placement, so tidy, wasn't panic. It read like punctuation. Park here, walk that way, let the camera see motion, but not identity. The fence post that redacted a face had the rhythm of rehearsal, the way a person might test a route after work, counting steps under their breath until the choreography was right. The lot itself became a sentence written in public, in plain words that wouldn't read. In files and whispered theories, 2 ideas fenced each other. One said proximity breeds opportunity, and the condo was not alone. Construction nearby, transient crews, strangers moving on short jobs and shorter leases. The other said familiarity is faster than luck, and the window was small enough that a person would have to know when she left, where she kept her keys, what the morning looked like without being told. Neither theory. Event. Both could fit. The dive team's circles on the ponds grew wider, then stopped. The canvassers' questions shifted from, "Did you see?" to, "What do you remember now that you know the time?" Memory behaved like water spilled on tile, rushing toward what it wanted to touch, leaving dry islands everywhere else. A dog that barked, a shoe scuff near a stairwell, a light in a hallway that was always on, except someone swore it wasn't once. Each scrap arrived with its own echo and then fell quiet. The timestamp didn't name anyone, but it did something just as cruel. It erased possibilities people had been clinging to out of kindness. There was no space for a late coffee, a wrong turn that spiraled into a new life. A voluntary distance opened under the pressure of work and love and 20-something restlessness. The corridor was too tight for fantasies. It barely had room for a man to move through, a woman to be hurried through, a car to be returned with the engine still warm. Detectives tried to step like the walker, from the slot of time to the seam of shadow to the square of concrete where the camera blinks. They felt the weird calm that footage forces on you. The world flows at one speed, and guilt, if it's there, moves at exactly the same. No trip, no pause, no hand lifting to hide a face that the fence hides anyway. People wanted a flinch, a twitch of conscience, any visible tax for the audacity of walking away. The video paid nothing. The case taught a mean lesson about cities, how they can hold you without noticing, and how once you are gone, they can also hold the shape of you so perfectly that searching feels like reaching into your own shadow. The routes from condo to lot did not blur. They sharpened into lines you could remember in your sleep. Everyone who learned them carried a private superstition. If they walked it enough, an answer might step out from between two parked cars and take a breath. Time, which had once been an enemy, became a kind of partner. Months added weight to tips that refused to die, granting them a different gravity than the heat-borne rumors of the first week. Yet none bent the clock. The corridor remained a corridor. The map never confessed. The car's clean lines never opened like a mouth and told the story its metal had heard. What end does a story have when the last visible act is a person walking out of frame as if they belong to the world more than the person they're leaving behind? Some endings are not resolution but arrangement, facts stacked into a shape you can live with because you have to. Here is an address. Here is a timestamp. Here is a car. Here is a walk. There is an ending, though, if you are willing to let silence count. It happens at dusk, when the lot throws long bars of shadow and the fence post darkens into a metronome again. You stand at the edge of the concrete where a face should have been, and you feel the city watching itself, trying to remember. The air is ordinary. The ordinary is the scariest part. A door closes somewhere with the soft finality of a turned page. The echo takes a long time to fade. And when it does, the only sound left is the slow beat of footsteps you can't place and can't stop hearing. The measured, indifferent rhythm that gave the case its truest name. The parking lot walker,